Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Do I really need to give you the entire show preview? All that matters is that we're in this thing together. Let's get to it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Taking a Cadillac is more than just taking a drive. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate every journey. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And the week that was sucked. And it's going to take more than any Richard Lovelady, Dickie Lovelady. But we here at the Mets Pod are here to cheer you up. So we'll be giving away Mets Pod hats. That's right. Stay tuned. We'll tell you how to win them later in the show. But Joe, do I really have to ask you today? I mean, the Mets are 1-6 since the last pod. I don't really want to ask you how are you doing. I think we just got to get down to it here of what's going on with this baseball team.
Connor, it's just like a double whammy. The Mets had obviously a miserable week, and I'm very happy that we're able to make the other people and the fans of this show happy with some hats, because you're going to beat us to having our hats too. So it's just a double
Just like
whammy at you and I. Just like the shirts. But no, Connor, I mean, obviously let's get into everything over the last week and where the Mets are and where they're headed. Certainly this is not going to be the most positive show that we've ever had, probably.
If you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to SMY's YouTube channel so you never miss a show, it's kind of jarring, Joe, that it feels like they never win a game anymore. They're 1-6 since our last show, and they're still 46-33. That's kind of remarkable in this. It goes to show you the kind of start they had, but they can't go on like this for much longer with how tight the division is, how much of a kind of dogfight the National League is going to be as a whole. We're going to take a slightly different approach to tackle everything that's happened. Joe and I are going to we're going to go through really the Mets' 5 biggest problems here and kind of break them down, at least by categories. We have starting pitching, we have DH, we have the revolving door at third base, which was a quiet issue for a while, and now it's a very, very loud one. Center field, and just the lack of this team's ability to manufacture runs, whether that's from team speed, making contact, of course, runners in scoring position as well. Let's go into it topic by topic, Joe, because instead of ranking it where I think we could see things a little closely, we can kind of unpack this step by step. The starting pitching has been the biggest topic because this is a regression topic, right? When you look at it, the Mets starting pitching was never going to be able to consistently replicate how they came out of the gate through the first 6 weeks or whatever it was this year. They were never giving up home runs. They weren't really giving up much at all. The biggest problem was they weren't going deep enough into games, and that's often a problem to start off a season. What do you make of this rut, Joe, that is partially affected by injury? Kodai Senga, who was the Mets' best starter, went down. Sean Manaea hasn't pitched for the Mets this year. Tyler McGill started to struggle and then went down. And then also it's just that you have players like Griffin Canning, even David Peterson, kind of hit their first real rut of the season. Canning is now an extended rut.
Yeah, Connor, I think when it comes to the starting pitching, I'm generally maybe not as concerned as everybody else is. I do think it's very fair to say Griffin Canning, I don't know if it's hit a wall or the shine is off or whatever, but he's not controlling anything and this is over a handful of starts now. So Canning is definitely trending in the wrong direction. A guy like Paul Blackburn, I mean, the Mets didn't even envision him being a part of this rotation. They wanted him to be a long man out of the bullpen. Injuries have forced him into it. And, all things considered, he was like 1 out away last night on Monday's game from getting kind of exactly what I was hoping and praying Paul Blackburn could do, 5 innings of 3-run ball. So he did get kind of close. And when you look at Peterson, that maybe not literally, but pretty much his like first bad start this year, essentially. So I'm not exactly going to get on him. I think this is just right now, everything is going poorly. So we're going to take each start in each individual item, and we're, like you said, we're going to go through each part and make it maybe a little bigger than it is. And I want to try to disseminate here what is current problem in the skid and what is problem going forward. Frankie Montas is coming back tonight, and I know there's a lot of you rolling your eyes at that. The Mets still believe they have something in Frankie Montas. They signed him for a reason, for the money that they did. He was really just building up in spring training, just within the confines of the regular season. So his rehab assignment didn't go well, but he gets an opportunity now in the rotation. Sean Manaea might be one rehab start away from coming back. Either way, he's coming back imminently. Kodai Senga is going to be throwing off a mound, so he looks to be on track for that All-Star break, maybe shortly after the All-Star break kind of time frame to come back. So for the rotation, I think right now you're just getting struggles from the guys that coming into the year, you kind of expected you to get struggles from Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill, and Paul Blackburn. Clay Holmes has been fine. The walks, obviously, in the start at the end of last week were a problem, but he's been fine. Peterson's been great, and they have guys coming back. So my starting pitching meter, maybe this is a hot take, it's not that high, but certainly it's been one of the reasons that they've had this elongated losing streak.
I'm glad you unpacked it that way, Joe, is that this, breaking all these down, there's a now element and there's a long-term element. And the baseball season's long. You never want your team that you have high expectations of to go through this kind of problem for this, this extended stretch. You're going to lose series. You're going to even get swept at times. The Mets, though, right now, there's just no, sugarcoating this. This is a problem right now for this team. But I don't think the starting pitching is a long-term problem. Kodai Senga is going to be back. Sean Manaea is going to be back. Assuming this Mets team makes the playoffs, you feel good about going into a playoff series frontline with Senga, Manaea, and Peterson. And like you said, Joe, Clay Holmes in this equation as well, which kind of brings me to now, right now, it's a massive issue. Right. But I can't sit here and say I think that the Mets are going to line up Paul Blackburn and Frankie Montas in a playoff series, right? And they got to find a way to get through this right now. And that means the offense needs to pick it up, which brings me to the next category, that is DH. Now, DH is a tricky one, right? Because Jesse Winker got hurt, who was signed here to be kind of a platoon DH. Mark Vientos got hurt, who is somebody that can DH, especially in that platoon situation, but even really just regularly when things are going right for him, which before Vientos got hurt, they weren't going right for him in the field and at the plate. So the Mets have also been hit by the injury bug in this spot. But Joe, what's frustrating in this specific spot is the Mets see something in Jared Young that I don't know if anyone else does. And the results are not changing, despite the Mets not publicly saying this, but they are clearly insisting when he's in the lineup as much as he is, that he is some kind of solution here. So in my opinion, this is the one that has been glossed over the most, because if you want to be one of the big boppers in the National League, you can't be a zero at DH. And this is something that drove me completely insane with the 2022 Mets. I mean, it was something where I wanted to put my head through a wall that team was assembled the way it was. It was such a good team. And it felt like they just punted on a free spot to have a bat in the lineup for so long. The Mets can't control that Jesse Winker got hurt and that Mark Vientos underperformed before he got hurt. And we're going to see both of those guys with the Mets this year, just like the pitching conversation we had. But I understand when you run out of pitchers. It's happened to the Dodgers, right? It just happens during the regular season. The season's too long, and these guys, the way they throw, you just got to find a way through it, and you're going to lose games because of it. I can't accept just running out of bats. It's just, to me, that's non-negotiable. And the Mets have, in June, run out of bats.
Yeah, you're right, Connor. And the DH situation, I don't think we realized when he went down how much we would miss Jesse Winker. It was just kind of like, oh, well, Winker wasn't playing that great anyway, so they'll be just fine. But now you had Vientos underperforming and on the injured list, though, he's coming back here imminently within the next few days. For me at the DH position, I don't know why Starling Marte isn't playing every day that he is physically able to go out there. At the bare minimum, he's going to put up a professional at bat. He may not be the Starling Marte that the Mets signed 4 years ago, where he's going to hit 290 and he's going to be an all-star caliber player, but he's going to give you a professional at bat. And, I think back to the first game of the Braves series where everything went wrong. Not not the Citi Field Brave series, the series in Atlanta. I don't understand why Starling Marte wasn't pinch hitting for Jared Young with a runner on second in extra innings. I bet you Starling Marte would have at minimum moved Acuna over to third base, and Jared Young just flailed at 3 changeups below the knees, and that was that. But the DH situation, when you think about like catcher, you can deal with, all right, maybe you're not going to get a ton of offense from catcher. It's going to be defensive focused, or you could do that in center field on occasion. But the literal position is designated hitter. So it's mind blowing that they don't have like a real solution right now. And the reality is they're going to be in a tough spot too, as we talk about third base here shortly. They're going to be in a tough spot as to what they're going to do when Mark Vientos comes back. How are they going to deploy him?
I mean, I would just DH him. This is going to be a larger theme, Joe. The Mets, the season's about winning. I'm done with and let's go right to third base, the revolving door. This is the same exact conversation. I understand player development, and this would be a different conversation for me if the Mets said Jet Williams is up this year and we're going to ride it out with Jet Williams, or Drew Gilbert has been hot for a year in the minors and Drew Gilbert's going to be our center fielder. But we have seen a lot of Brett Baty. I'm not going to write him off, but I think the Mets are telling you what they think Luisangel Acuna is, right? I think there's part of the Mets that they don't truly know what Brett Baty fully is yet. They have an idea, but when he has those weak stretches that he gets hot, they buy into the hope again. Mark Vientos has a full season last year and a massive playoffs to stand on, where I'm not giving up on Mark Vientos yet. I just don't think he can play third base, which is a whole nother problem, which brings it back to the DH conversation. Ronnie Mauricio really isn't supposed to be here coming off the injury that he had. As you've pointed out many times, Joe, that was just a tight spot for the Mets where they were kind of forced to bring him here. But the revolving door at third base, and this was a large combo on last week's show, they need a floor at third base right now. And I don't think the floor at third base is on this team. I really don't, because even if Vientos comes back and hits, which I really think he can, I don't know if it's going to happen immediately, but I think there's a point in July where Mark Vientos gets his feet back under him and we go, okay, Mark Vientos might not replicate what he did last year, but he's going to contribute offensively better than a lot of guys in the bottom 4 spots in this lineup have. But they need a floor at third base, and that includes defense, and they don't have it right now. I'm pretty confident that not only are the Mets going to get Winker back and Vientos back, where you can go get a DH at the deadline, but they're getting their guys back. This team needs some kind of floor at third base, Joe, and it's not on the roster. I will continue to say it. The Mets' goal this year should be to win a World Series. And if they appear in a National League Championship Series again, one of Brett Baty, Luisangel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio, and Mark Vientos are not out there in the first inning of the first game playing third base. There's no way.
So here's the conundrum a little bit, because I don't want to push everything out to the end of July and into August and into September. We got to get there first. So
right.
how do we get from today to July 31st, where, maybe someone establishes themselves over the next month and change? But I mean, Brett Baty's hitting 145 with a 468 OPS in June. Like, that's just literally unplayable. Defensively,
it's Jared Young numbers.
Yeah. Poor Jared Young. But defensively, Baty's largely been fine, right? Like, a couple things here and there, but he's been perfectly fine defensively. I almost wonder, until this offense gets rolling, Connor, might you have no choice but to suck it up and hope Mark Vientos can get closer to the defense that he had in 2024, which was below average instead of very bad like it was so far in 2025. And then you DH Marte. Like, is that the best solution in the interim to get some run production? Because what it comes down to is the Mets are not scoring runs at any level of consistency. And once you get after the top 5, which, by the way, you could tell Carlos Mendoza is getting a little frustrated by this, because he was quite frank, I think, after Monday night's game. Like, the top 4, they're second in baseball in OPS. I know Pete has kind of tumbled a little bit over the last few days, and Lindor had that cold stretch, but he's had a few straight two-hit games. But between those two and Nimmo and Soto, and McNeil is not batting title McNeil, but he's OPSing, 790, I think, since May 1st or something like that. So he's been perfectly fine. The problem here is 6 through 9, the Mets are getting zeros from, and they need productivity. They need floor, like you said. And it's tough. It's tough to find that balance between now and then. But I think the play might be, hey, Mark Vientos, you just got to play some better defense and find your way. Not necessarily the hitter that he was in 2024. Like, I'm not expecting him to come back and post like an 880 OPS, but come and be productive. And if you do that and then let Marte play more often, I think between now and even when Winker comes back or deadline and these things flesh themselves out a little bit, you have a chance to have a deeper, more impactful lineup.
So the next one is the one that by far bothers me the least, Joe, and that's center field. And that's because you can't be angry at a problem when you know what the guy is and you put him in a situation and to be something he's not. And I love Tyrone Taylor on this team. I think he is on a championship team, a totally capable fourth outfielder. Now, the Mets went into this year, looking at center field and saying Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor are going to platoon. And Siri got hurt very, very early on. And because of his defense, Taylor is out there a lot. And he's not offensively a starting caliber center fielder. This is an area where I think the Mets are going to be aggressive at the deadline, but I'm not sitting here on June, the week of the 24th and going, the Mets got to figure something out in the next 10 days. I can actually ride this one out closer to the deadline if the rest starts to solve itself, right? Where you're looking at it and going, okay, we're getting some production out of the DH. Our starting pitching is starting to get healthy. Third base, that's a larger issue that we just talked about, and we don't really know the solution there right now. But center field is one, Joe, where as long as the defense is okay, you kind of mentioned this with catcher, I can't sit here and be mad that Tyrone Taylor doesn't give the Mets a lot offensively, because this is a problem that nobody is even batting an eye towards if the other things aren't bleeding right now.
100%. You can't be mad at a fourth outfielder for being a fourth outfielder.
Right.
Like that's just,
who's been a good fourth outfielder.
Yeah. I love having Tyrone Taylor on the Mets, and he often does some of those little things, right, that you really appreciate. Like even when the Braves walked the Mets off and the most frustrating game, he chased the ball 250 feet.
Didn't give up a hit.
Ran into the wall, went and got it. I mean, frankly, just not necessary. He could have just let it go, and I mean, the game was over, right? But this is something unlike the DH situation, unlike the third base solution, to your point. There's nothing the Mets can do right now. There is no solution. There is no one they could call up that's going to make a difference. They need to bat Tyrone Taylor 8th, 9th, bottom of the order, take his defense, and get offensive production elsewhere. But this is, to your point, a spot where the Mets, I think, have to be aggressive come trade deadline. Does Boston consider trading Jarren Duran? If so, you're on the phone with them. Baltimore is probably going to trade Cedric Mullins. You're on the phone with them.
There's options.
Yeah, Minnesota is a team that's reeling, and I know he has his own injury past. But, man, could you imagine the impact a healthy Byron Buxton can make in this lineup? And the Twins are reeling pretty bad right now, so they're trending in the direction of maybe selling some pieces. So there are going to be some options for center field, and I think it's imperative that it's unfortunately not a now thing. You can't make that deal here on June 24th, or frankly, probably not even July 13th. Like, you have to get past the MLB draft before these things really start to take shape a little bit. But center field's going to have to be, and by all accounts and every report, everyone assumes it's going to be a high priority. But there are some names for the Mets to look through, and it's on David Stearns in this front office to make sure they get that impactful center fielder for the second half.
Byron Buxton, OPS over 900. He's 100th percentile in sprint speed, 93rd percentile in fielding range. I know he has his injury problems, but man, when he's on the field, he's one of the most exciting players in the game. I'm fascinated to see what they do at center field, because that's where a big splash could be made. And I know people listening are probably just kind of wondering what's going on with Drew Gilbert. Well, it hasn't been a good year for Drew Gilbert in Syracuse. He is batting .213. His OPS is well under 700. It's probably a longer combo for another day, but I just kind of wanted to knock that one out. People going like, why don't you give Drew Gilbert a shot? Well, he's just not performing he turns 25 in September, Joe. Like, when you're a 24-year-old, almost 25, not performing in AAA, it's just tough to get that kind of shot. Let's go to the last one here. This is the lack of team speed, ability to manufacture runs. Just not something the Mets ultimately do, even when they have those outbursts like they did on Saturday in Philadelphia, where they hit 1,000,000 home runs. They typically just don't play this style of baseball. Now, you could argue that some reinforcements can help this area. I mean, not only an upgrade at center field, but Winker is a guy that gets on base at a much higher clip than people they've played at DH. But yeah, this is one, Joe, where this isn't how the team was built, I should say. I'd like to see them hit better with runners in scoring position. And because of the stars they have, you would think that can naturally change itself in the second half, but it's no guarantee at this point. But the roster construction as a whole, I'm not overly optimistic that this is who the Mets are going to be, barring that they made 3 deadline moves. And like, we're too far away. You and I try to be careful of this.
Right.
But what is the over-under right now on deadline moves?
I think that's an important. Yeah,
players,
yeah.
Not overall trades.
Right, something like that. I think people
definitely a reliever,
definitely a center fielder, maybe an infielder, depending on how the next month and change goes. And I think they'll be opportunistic in the rotation market if something fleshes itself out that makes sense. But I don't think
maybe 3.5
rotation. Yeah, like 2.5. But
that's a lot. Teams don't do that.
And I don't think it's going to be in David Stearns's mold to just say, I'm going to overhaul the roster at the deadline. And I know a lot of people are going to be upset about that. That the Mets' success, they're going to get obviously some pieces at the deadline, but the Mets' success this year is going to be based on Mark Vientos bouncing back, based on Jesse Winker coming back and hitting like he's capable of. It's going to be based on Sean Manaea coming back and being the Sean Manaea that was last year. Frankie like everything. It's going to be based on the people that are already here. And who he brings in is Brooks Raley. Exactly. Like, these are guys that are going to come back and make an impact. And the deadline is to supplement that core and that, team that the Mets have together. And, just generally to the not much team speed. Yeah, they're not built to be a particularly fast team. Like, Francisco Lindor will steal more bases as his toe starts to probably feel a little better. Nimmo has been a little more aggressive this year than he has in years past with stolen bases, but they're just not built that way right now. And, there will be some guys coming down the pike over the next couple years, and, they'll look into the free agent market, I'm sure, to add some speed. But when it comes to run creation, look, the Mets are not built like an all or nothing team where it's like, if they don't hit home runs, they have no chance to score runs. So it's not to that extreme, but they're just not situationally hitting well. It's a real combination of factors, and that's kind of why we are where we are right now.
This is one of those weird ones where you could argue this is the biggest problem, especially if you factor in runners in scoring position production. But you can also argue if you solve center field, which was a separate category, it significantly enhances this one, because all the guys we talked about, Joe, steal bases. Buxton, Mullins, and Duran all steal bases. So this one is going to take more than one move to fix, but it is one of those ones where it has kind of this trickle or chain link effect with all the other ones. So listen, these things are not going to be fixed by the time we do another pod or two. Like, this is not, some of these are deadline issues. Some of these are getting guys back off the IL issues. And some of these, Joe, are simply that people need to step up and pick each other up. And we've seen guys on this team do that before, but now it's really, really going to be on them. And this kind of takes us to a new segment alert. And usually these are really happy segments. This is sadly a new segment alert we're not so happy about. How about Back on the Farm? You've been here for Down on the Farm, and don't worry, you're not getting cheated out of that. That's after this. Back on the farm. Hello, Francisco Alvarez and Luisangel Acuna here, Joe. This was certainly due for Alvarez because I didn't really care that he hit the home run this weekend and got sent down. I don't know what happened to this guy defensively, and he's got to go down there and find that before he's on a major league roster. Acuna, I like the speed and defense. I'm not one of those people that ever expects him to grow into an everyday player, but the Mets clearly want him playing in a more everyday role, to kind of find himself again too. But Alvarez is the more glaring one here.
I was just surprised of the timing of that Alvarez thing. I wasn't surprised that he got sent down. It just felt weird coming off. I know it ultimately the home run didn't mean anything in the whole prism of the game, but he had a 450-foot home run, which is what he's capable of, and the next day he's sent down. But what it comes down to here, Connor, is it's been a regression for Alvarez. You know, the offense, it feels like he's in between on everything. Sometimes he's late on the fastball, and then when he's kind of on the fastball a little bit, he's chasing breaking stuff and off speed away. The power hasn't bounced back, kind of like we said it wouldn't, right? Like coming off the hamate bone, that is something that does take a period of time. But defensively, his throwing actually took a big step forward from last year. He's throwing out more runners. His pop time is much better, but framing took a significant step back. He's not mobile getting two balls in the dirt, which was never really his like strength anyway, but he's taken a regression. And I think we're at the point now where Alvarez's offensive struggles did start to trickle over into the defense. And I remember you and I talking in May, right? And it was just like, well, the thing about Alvarez is his offensive struggles are not really trickling the defense because he was playing better defense at the time. I think you send him to AAA Syracuse, you get him with JP Arancibia down there, a really good catching instructor, former big league catcher, and fix Alvarez here. It doesn't need to be an elongated thing. I don't think Alvarez is going to Syracuse for a month or two. I think he's going for a couple weeks, refresher, mental reset, because that play in Atlanta where he just threw to second base, and I don't know why it's like playing MLB The Show and hitting the wrong button and accidentally throwing to second base. And I think just everything's up here. It's between the ears with Alvarez right now. And I think a reset down in Syracuse could be beneficial for him. And then when it comes to Acuna, look, at this point, his role was come in late for defense and come in pinch run. Like that's really all he was. And at this point, you want to let Luisangel Acuna continue to get at bats and try to develop as a hitter. I'm with you that I think at this point, his long-term is probably more of a utility infielder, which is fine. There's legitimate value to that. We had a conversation for a month on this show about bringing back Jose Iglesias, who's just a utility infielder. So there is value to it. But when you have a guy like Travis Jankowski, right? He could just do everything Acuna can other than play infield. So let Acuna go to AAA, get some at-bats, because frankly, playing once a week for him was clearly not working right now. And his swing got long. He was chasing. His contact quality has been real poor this year. He's barreled basically 2 balls all year. So a tough go for Acuna, but it makes sense, I think, to have him in Syracuse and let him get some at-bats and just go with a more veteran presence, because sometimes you want the young player, but you don't really want them just like rotting on the bench either.
Well, those guys are unfortunately taking a step back. We do have some positive news from down on the farm as we got a couple promotions here, Joe. I know these always make you happy. How about Jacob Reimer, Mets' former 4th-round pick, and Carson Benge, last year's 1st-round pick? They are both going from high A Brooklyn to double A in Binghamton. And then Colin Houck, former 1st-round pick who had a miserable first year in the system, bouncing back quite nicely this year, going from St. Lucie to Brooklyn. So while it hasn't been perfect for Houck, it felt like he got hot at the right time, and it's good to see him making some much-needed progress here, Joe. And I guess we'll start with him before we go to Benge, who's been just phenomenal since he ever put on any kind of Met uniform. We were probably one more bad season away from being like, Houck just might just be a massive miss. It's good to see him get some confidence.
For sure. And we have to remember when we go back, like, of course, 2024 in every semblance of the way, under the hood, Statistically, everything was not good for Colin
Even
Houck in his first
defensively.
professional season. Defensively was a trouble. Just across the board, it wasn't for him. But he's 20 years old now. He was a two-sport athlete in high school. Baseball was wasn't always his top focus. He was getting recruited by SEC schools for quarterback. So this is a legitimate athlete that was adjusting to baseball full time. And he even started this year kind of poor. And it was like, uh-oh, here we go. This is the direction we're going here. He turned it around, an 812 OPS with low A St. Lucie, specifically from May 1st through this past weekend. He hit 285 with a 389 on base percentage and an 879 OPS in that stretch. What he's showing that he's able to do is he can hit the ball really, really hard. That's his standout trait right now. His strikeout rate is still maybe a little suboptimal, but it's not what it was last year. So a good step in the right direction for Houck, and a well-earned call-up to Brooklyn where he'll get the opportunity to face that next level of competition and see if he could translate the success at the low A level to the high A level.
Now, moving over to Benge and Jacob Reimer, it's when you look at Benge, Joe, I mean, it felt like Brooklyn was just too small for him. Like we show the numbers on YouTube right now. He's hitting 302. He's getting on base almost 42% of the time. OPS just a hair under 900, 15 steals. This is a good athlete and somebody, Joe, coming from the college level that I feel like this guy's just going to keep hitting, honestly. I'm not saying he's going to fly through AA because that's not fair to put those expectations on anyone. But if there's anything we know about Carson Benge, going back to when you broke him down as a draft prospect before he ever even touched a Mets jersey, this guy is just a pure hitter.
For sure. And add on to the stats you see on the screen below, 27 extra base hits down there in Brooklyn. And we know that home run power sometimes doesn't come so friendly to left-handed hitters in Brooklyn. Though I will say when it comes to Benge, his power right now is more left center, opposite way. He still needs to take that next step in his development to have that pull power, which he has the potential for, but just hasn't been able to show quite yet professionally. I'm excited to see him in AA. I think you're going to see those home run numbers spike up a little bit at the next level. And this is a guy that, as you said, a real complete hitter, a better athlete than I thought he was. Like coming into the year, I knew he was a pretty good athlete and they were going to try him in center field. And, reports in spring training were, yeah, he looks like he could probably handle center. I was like, sometimes they just say that. So let me see it for myself. And he's looked fine out there. I don't know if long-term center field is going to be his spot or not, but we'll continue to see him develop there. The Mets will certainly continue to give him run out there. But this is a first-round pick that we thought could go through the system quickly. And there's an argument to be made. He probably should have already been in AA. But one thing that he did work on, he was struggling against lefties. And he's made I would say over the last 3 weeks, it's been a real uptick in his performance, even against left-handed pitchers. So I think at this point, Benge was ready for the call-up, and I'm excited to see him in a lineup with Jet Williams and Nick Morabito and Ryan Clifford. And now Jacob Reimer coming along with him. And Reimer, former fourth-round pick. Last year, he was slated to be part of the spring breakout game, which you saw me broadcast this past spring on SNY. And a week before the game, during workouts, tore his hamstring and needed surgery and missed essentially the rest of the season. And he was someone that looked like he was on a trajectory to be a top 10 prospect in the system. Like him and Jet Williams were in the same lineup and kind of like going back and forth, like matching stats and looking very similar. And he comes back here in Brooklyn and, the stats that you see below, 284 average, 384 on base, OPS of 886, like that's including like a recent struggle for Reimer. Like he was well over 300. His OPS for a while was upper 900s, over 8 home runs, stole some bases, 30 extra base hits. This is a guy, third base, first base, really refined his swing this past offseason, went to the Mets pitching lab, which now is kind of a hitting lab, or at least the beginning stages of a hitting lab. and made some mechanical adjustments that he has said like made a real difference in his season so far. So now you add him to that double A lineup. The Mets are slowly but surely getting these prospects up to the upper minors, where when I do another top 30 update, we'll like do a stat sheet of how many are in like double A and triple A. The numbers are starting to trend more in the direction that the better prospects in the system are in the upper minors.
Yeah, and for Reimer, it's going to be 21 this entire season. So even with that injury season you talked about, Joe, because he was a pick out of high school in the 4th round for the Mets in 2022, still a really, really young player. Great to see him have that kind of offensive output in Brooklyn, and we'll see what he could do in Double A now, which is going to be a big jump for him. If you want to check out Colin, Houck, and the Cyclones in Coney Island, Friday, June 27th is the first Friday night fireworks of the season. Plus, the first 2,500 fans in attendance get a Brandon Nimmo MG bobblehead. Game time is 6:40 p.m. and gates open at 6 o'clock. You could also get a game ticket with 2 drinks, beer, seltzers, or soft drinks for just $35. For tickets, visit brooklyncyclones.com/tickets. You're listening to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Of course, you can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel or wherever you get your shows. All right, Joe, classic us here. Time to review the scoreboard, and the results are more of the same of what we've had the last couple of weeks, which is actually promising considering how much the Mets have struggled, that we haven't completely gone in the tank. Over-under push was at 7 for Juan Soto hits. We both went over, and the over finally delivers on this. Soto had 8 hits. We each get a point. Yes or no, will a Mets catcher hit a home run? We both said no. Well, Alvarez hit that home run against the Phillies, so no points awarded here. Yes or no, will Bryce Harper hit a home run against the Mets? We both said he probably wasn't going to play. He didn't. We each get a point. Over-under push was at 1 for Luisangel Acuna stolen bases. Joe, you thought he'd steal one. I thought he'd go over this. He didn't steal any. Acuna just really hasn't played at all. No points awarded. Over-under push was at 6 for David Peterson innings on that evening. That was the first start of our podcast week. Joe, you went under. I pushed. He went over. 7+, no points awarded. Over under 4.5 for Mets wins. They won 1 game. The good news is, if there is any, we both went under, so we both got the point. I don't think we had 1 win in mind. I think we had 3 to 4.
I think we both said, yeah, they're going to go 4-3. It's going to be just fine, folks.
Yep, that's the exact quote, I believe. Yep. We each take home 3 points, which has kind of been the theme for weeks now. I lead by a point, 37. Joe has 36. We got 6 games on tap, 3 more against the Braves, who the Mets have not beat, so that's been great. 3 against the Pirates. Over under 3.5. Brandon Nimmo hits. Joe, I'll let you kick this one off, and I will give you the nugget that I texted you last week, that Brandon Nimmo just owns Spencer Strider to the point where you just don't really see this very often. Brandon Nimmo is batting .474 with a OPS over 1,500 against Strider. In 19 at-bats, he has 9 hits, 2 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. He's walked 3 times. He has struck out 4 times. So before I let you go, Joe, keep in mind this is Brandon Nimmo's basically favorite matchup on planet Earth, which is bizarre.
Brandon Aaron Judge Nimmo against Spencer Strider. But Connor, that stat is helpful. I was going over regardless of who the pitchers were. Brandon Nimmo, for all the things that are not going too great offensively right now, in the month of June, Nimmo is hitting .309 with a .378 on base, a .580 slug. That's a .958 OPS with 6 home runs and 12 RBIs. Like, he is absolutely on fire. So I will take over 3.5 hits. And you know what? Maybe we'll get lucky and he'll get, 2 or 3 of them against Spencer Strider here on Tuesday. And he only needs to get, a couple more against the rest of the Braves and then the Pirates series.
I'll take the over here as well. Obviously, after reading those numbers, it's not a high mark. As you said, Joe, Nimmo's been better as of late. I kind of like them to just kind of ride it out with him in the 2-hole, to be honest with you at this point. Like, just kind of take it from there. So I'll take the over on this. It's a pretty low number. Over under 1.5 for Juan Soto home run. Soto has really, really found it lately. I am going to take the over here, Joe. I know it's maybe a stretch in 6 games, but Soto is traditionally great against the Braves. We talked about that a lot before the Mets went down to Atlanta. We didn't get to have a combo before they came back to New York, but he hit a home run against the Braves in that game. Did strike out in a big spot, but other people got to do something at some point. It can't all be Juan Soto in this spot, although he's trying. So I'll go over here, Joe. I think Soto's locked in right now, and he looks really, really good, especially the power right now.
That's exactly the word I was going to use, Connor. Juan Soto's locked in. Even that strikeout, look, it stinks that it happened.
Tough
but that
matchup.
was a tough matchup, and that was a fantastic at bat. He just that was a tough pitch, and he swung and missed. But yeah, I'm going over on Juan Soto home runs right now. He's elevating the ball. He's hitting the ball hard. He's having good at bat after good at bat. Juan Soto is amongst the many things, and there was once a time that everything else was going so well that Juan Soto was the butt of our criticism. But right now he is doing his part, and he needs other people around him to do theirs.
All right, Joe, you kick off the next one. Over-under pushes at 1 for Pete Alonso home runs in the next 6 games.
I always hate this one, Connor, because I always get it wrong. I either say, Pete, he's not seeing the ball too well, so he's not going to homer, and then he hits 2 that night, and that's just kind of the end of that. I guess I'll push, because now Pete does seem kind of in between. I don't think he's going to go homerless, and you know what? Maybe he'll hit 4, but I'll push and say 1.
For the sake of us not agreeing on all of these, because I agree, I don't think Pete looks great right now, but you're right. He could do it in one game at any moment, Joe. He really, really can. Now, what I will say is what you have to factor into all of these, as bad as it's been, I know everybody, I'd say 95% of our audience is sitting there right now. Just the sky is falling. This team stinks. And I get it. But Chris Sale is on the IL. The Mets hit Strider well traditionally. And even the last start in Atlanta, they hit the ball hard against him and he got through it. Credit to him.
Yep.
And then Atlanta is going to have, a slighter drop off in the last 2 pitchers they're starting. And then you have the Pirates. I'm going to go over just for us to be a little different here. I don't think Pete looks great right now, but Pete is the classic guy that he could look bad for 5 games. And then in one game, he just hits the ball out of sight 3 times in a row. So I'll go with the over here. The next one is yes or no. Will Hayden Singer have 1 hit? I'm going to go no here, Joe. I don't think he's going to play a lot. And it's obviously he's not an offensive machine either. I mean, they got 6 games. Does he play 2 of them? I even if he does, that means, am I getting 7 to 8 Hayden Singer at bats in these next 6 games? Unfortunately, I'm going to take the no.
I'm going to take the yes. We need to be different here on a couple of things. He's going to play in a couple games. You're going to get 7 to 8 Singer at bats, and just poke one the other way through the hole. I just need 1 hit. I don't need 5 hits. I need 1.
Literally 1 hit.
Yeah.
Like the odds are actually in your favor if you were really gambling on this.
Yeah. So one hit, he's got this. So yes, Hayden Singer will play a couple games and he will get a hit.
All right, Joe, our favorite category. Over-under pushes at 1 for the Mets starters going 6 innings.
1. Wow.
That's a sad number.
Yeah, this is really trending in the wrong direction. I feel like I'm being forced to take the over because the Pirates are a porous offensive team. As good as their pitching is, they give not. I mean, just look at what Paul Skeen's win-loss record is. It's Jacob deGrom's Cy Young years kind of all over again. So I will say over because 1 feels like a small number with 3 of those games being against the Pirates.
Yeah, I'm trying to have us differ a little bit, but
we got a couple.
We got a couple. I have to go over here. I mean, the Pirates right now. Remember when I did this with the Rockies? The Pirates, and we shouldn't be laughing at any other teams right now with what the Mets are going through. I know.
You have to laugh through it all, Connor.
Do you know that the Pirates don't have a single player in their starting lineup with an OPS at 800? That seems.
I figured O'Neal Cruz would be like in the neighborhood. Is he their highest?
O'Neal Cruz is their second highest at 736.
Okay.
Because O'Neal Cruz kind of has this Schwarber thing going, where now Schwarber's been lights out this year, but I'm talking previous Schwarber years. O'Neal Cruz is batting 211, but he has hit 13 home runs. He does get on base at a 326 clip, but he struck out 101 times, which is insane. The highest is Andrew McCutchen.
Oh, there we go. Good for you, Cutch.
Andrew McCutchen, who I've really enjoyed on Twitter lately, has a 748 OPS at almost 39 years old. That is unbelievable. But the rest of this lineup, Brian Reynolds has been brutal. 669. Tommy Pham, 565. They've had big expectations for some of these young players like Brian Hayes over the years. 568. I'll obviously answer this that I think the Mets go over for starters going 6 innings because they just have to have 2 guys do it. And in theory, can you do it once against the Braves and once against the Pirates? But yeah, it's been, for all the sad Mets things we're discussing, this is like a side baseball opinion of mine. This is a Mets podcast that has national talk every once in a while. What the Pirates ownership has gotten away with is a disgrace to the sport. I mean, and we root for the Mets here, and if the Pirates were very good, it would only be a problem for the Mets. But I can't imagine what those fans feel like watching that team that has a young superstar in Skeens, and that is the lineup that they actually thought they could trot out for a major league team. So let's hope the Mets could take care of business against them, which leads us to the last one, Joe. Over-under push is at 3 for Mets wins. I am going to do the unthinkable here, and I'm going to take the over.
Let's go.
The Mets are too good of a baseball team for this to linger this long. They are. They're too good. Can you take 2 against the Braves and 2 against the Pirates here? I mean, can you do that in these next 6? I think I know it hasn't seemed like it lately, but it's a low ask. I'm going over here, Joe. I have a feeling you're going to push.
Connor, that's a genuine question. Can they? And I don't know if they can right now, but I will say I am going to push. You are absolutely right. But just the state, looking at the scoreboard right now, just the state of Mets affairs, just look at the numbers that we have. Like Brandon Nimmo, 3.5 hits in a week. Pete Alonso, 1 home run. Will Hayden Sanger hit a ball? Will 2 starters go 6 innings in a week? Just shows kind of the state of where the Mets are right now. And our producer is feeling our producer Jeff is feeling the bad times that the Mets are putting us through. But I will ultimately push. They'll take at minimum 1 of the Braves games, and unfortunately that means losing 3 of 4, and then take 2 out of 3 in Pittsburgh. So I'll push there, but you know what? I would love nothing more than to lose this point to you.
Our producer Jeff does a great job with these. I mean, it is not easy to do, especially the one year we did this podcast with SMY and the Mets were really, really bad in the second half. It was 2023 after they sold at the deadline. And we were doing some minor league numbers for this.
Almost all minor league.
Yeah, all minor league. And you definitely kicked my butt in that one. I am a little disappointed there's not a Jared Young number in this one. Like Jeff needs to start trolling a little more and actually which he's done before with the Starling Marte home runs, and we'll get back to it. But this is a really good week of categories. Let's see what the Mets could do. All right, of course we got the mailbag. Before we do that, we got some sweepstakes here. This is what you guys have been waiting for. How about a Mets Pod hat? And we've seen these. They look amazing. Check it out on the screen. If you haven't seen it yet, if you're watching on YouTube, you can take a look at it. It's got the Mets Pod logo on the front. It's got the SMY logo on the side. It came out great. We're really excited to give some away. These are made in a collab with our buddy Athlete Logos. Dan, who's been on the show, does such a good job. They're not going to be for sale. Just like the shirts we did previously, you have to win these, which gives it a little exclusive aspect here. So here's how. Look for the sweepstake announcement with a fancy graphic on SMY's social platforms. Dan Abrams, Joe, and I will share those posts as well. So if you follow any of us, you'll see it in your feed. All you have to do is repost that on Twitter or like and tag a Mets fan on Instagram or Facebook, or drop the comment, I want a hat. Literally, the comment is, I want a hat, under the show on YouTube. So 3 different ways. You can repost on Twitter, you can like and tag a Mets fan on Instagram or Facebook, or you could drop the comment, I want a hat, under the show on YouTube. So for everybody that contacts us and say, I don't use social media, you got 4 different options here. You just use one of them. Even if you don't use social media, you can go on YouTube and comment with an email address. That's it. The sweepstakes will run for 1 week. Look for it. Enter. We're going to pick 4 random winners. So this is not just one winner. We're going to have 4 random winners of these hats. And of course, if you win and you see us out at Citi Field, you come to a show and you have the hat on, like, we love seeing that. We've had that happen with the shirts. It's a lot of fun. We really appreciate the support. And hopefully it's a very small way us with SMY and Dan can kind of give back. Let's jump into the mailbag to close this thing out, Joe. C. Miller 16. This is C. Mill 1989 on Twitter. We kind of went through this, so I'll just read the question and we'll kind of move on. But he was asking, why is Jared Young on this team, let alone getting starts? He's 3 for 26 in June with an overall 150 average. He's batting 6th consistently on a $300 million team. At this point, Marte should be playing every day, average 100 points higher, and is hitting 300 plus in June. So, Joe, since we kind of answered this question, I'll spin it in a different direction to you. What do you think the lineup construction is once they kind of move on from this experiment in this spot? Because it feels like batting, and I know we've just been brutal on Jared Young on this show, and that's not really what we're trying to do, but this is just a dead spot in 6. Like, if you have a dead spot at 8 and 9, that's baseball. A dead spot in 6, you can't have it with how much of a buzzsaw the National League is.
I mean, I guess tell us how you really feel with this question. Jeez, why is Jared Young on this team?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah. But look, the Mets see something with Jared Young, and he does have real power. Like that home run he hit in Philly over 450 feet.
Oh, yes.
He could run into a fastball specifically against right-handed pitching, and he has historically, whether that's in the minor leagues, when he was over in Korea, like he has historically performed against right-handed pitching. With that said, I don't think they need to bat him 6th against the right-handed pitchers whenever he does play. And, you know, if you listen to the show, of course, you know, Connor and I are in agreement that Starling Marte should be getting the bulk of DH at bats, at least for now. I guess the one thing I will say to make this not a dump on Jared Young podcast, because that's just mean. Who do you want to bat 6th instead? What's the difference? Like if he's in the lineup, who do you want to bat 6th instead? Luis Torrens, Tyrone Taylor, Brett Beatty, who, by the way, I saw a stat on Twitter, like Brett Beatty's hitting like over 500 in the 9 hole and hitting like 100 everywhere else. So maybe Brett Beatty should just exclusively hit 9th. I don't know. But
there can't be correlation there.
No, I don't think. But what I will say is it's kind of a tough spot where until they get guys back, if Jared Young is going to play, which I think should be only on a part-time basis, it doesn't matter at this point who's batting 6, 7, or 8. And I hate to ask it that way because we're here to like analyze things, but you're getting nothing right now from any of those spots. So maybe you just take the advantage of at least he's a left-handed hitter who has historically hit righties and hope he runs into one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. You almost just kind of wonder, when did the Mets ever try anything else? And this isn't the answer because they've already showed their hand on it. I was kind of surprised they didn't play Acuna more with how bad things have gotten the last couple of weeks, to see if Acuna just chops a ball into the ground, he could beat it out to first base. And then when he's on first base, he's typically on second base. And I know he hasn't hit, but the reality is when nobody else is hitting, don't you want your probability to be higher? And with Acuna's speed, his probability to get on first base is higher than these guys. And this is not me going to bat for Acuna. I'm just saying, with how bad things have been, it's interesting that the Mets have kind of run back the same option over and over again, and maybe they're getting to the end here with that. We'll see. All right, our last question today is from Jay Sauer 991 on YouTube. Hey guys, while I do think the Mets need a center fielder, with them not having a true answer at third, could you see them acquiring a guy like Eugenio Suarez from Arizona instead? As of Sunday, he's got the second highest OPS in all of Major League Baseball in the month of June, behind Soto, I might add, and I think could really complement the top half of the lineup well. Arizona's been very inconsistent this year and would have to leapfrog multiple teams in their division, much less the others in the National League wildcard race. So could they look to sell an expiring contract like Suarez? Your thoughts? I mean, Joe, this is one. Arizona has become much more interesting with Corbin Carroll going on the IL with the fractured bone in his wrist. They've had pitching injuries. The one guy that's healthy is Zach Gallen. He's been terrible this year, which is shocking. This is going to be a conversation real quick. If Arizona has a bad month, you could be looking at Suarez as the biggest piece of the trade deadline. Like, not for the Mets.
Yeah.
I'm talking about available league-wide.
Suarez, if he becomes available, is obviously going to be incredibly popular. He has over 25 home runs this year. The one thing we have to keep an eye on in Monday night's game, he got hit on the hand by a 96-mile-an-hour fastball, left the game. They said x-rays were negative. They're calling it a contusion, but we've seen that story. Sometimes you get extra testing and something else is shown, like underneath the swelling that comes from a contusion. So keep an eye on that. But you mentioned that Diamondbacks injuries, Corbin Carroll, chip fracture in his wrist. They lost Corbin Burns, Justin Martinez, and AJ Puck all to Tommy John surgery in like the last month. They're trending in a direction where they may end up sellers, and they could be a super popular selling team with a guy like Suarez, with Zach Gallen, with Merrill Kelly, with a guy like Shelby Miller. They have a couple other pieces in the bullpen that could be exciting. But we talked about it earlier in the show, Connor. Third base, I think Mark Vientos needs to get a little bit of run there to see if he could do something. But if third base is still a concern a month from now, the Mets certainly need a center fielder. Okay, you could get a center fielder and a third baseman. There's no necessary rule against it. So if Suarez becomes available, 100% that should be someone that the Mets are going after pretty aggressively, because you're adding legitimate, a 40 home run type of bat into the middle of the order, and that just elongates the lineup more and elongates it more. So if you get someone like Suarez and pair him with a Mullins, just as an example, now you're talking about a serious World Series lineup. So I would keep a close eye on the Diamondbacks. Suarez is obviously the big name, but I think their other pieces could interest the Mets and other teams, and they could be a sneaky, a big factor come trade deadline time.
Yeah, Suarez is an interesting one, because what scares you is he's a guy, career-wise, he can run hot and cold. I mean, oddly enough, after 2019, where he went nuclear, he had a 930 OPS. He didn't have an OPS above 800 until this year. Like, he's finished with an OPS under 800 every single year before that. But like you said, Joe, 30 home run power. Typically on base he's right around like that 320-ish mark. He's not a huge on base guy, but good enough. He's not a savant at third base, but
no,
I think
he's definitely below average. I would say he's a step up from Vientos, but he's not particularly good either.
But on the flip side, and he strikes out a lot, although the strikeouts have been a little down this year compared to the previous 3 years, I feel like. But on the flip side, Joe, he's the type of bat that, as we're seeing right now, he gets hot in the playoffs, you could probably win the World Series. I say that in all seriousness. Like, if you have Juan Soto being Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor being the postseason performer he is, Pete Alonso being Pete Alonso, and Suarez runs into one, you are basically almost not impossible, but very difficult to beat by any team in baseball. So that's where he could fall back down to earth and run into these problems that he's had the last 4 years. But man, at some point you gotta actually take a risk, and he's the risky play that you could talk yourself into.
And ultimately, Connor, there's a risk with anyone you trade for at the 100%.
Deadline. We've seen this over and over again.
You're expecting huge things, and it's a 2.5 month sample size or whatever it ends up being, depending on how far you go. But Suarez is the type of guy that if the Mets can pull him in, he's the type of guy that could make a Yoenis Cespedes impact.
Right, that's a great comparison.
Like, he's a guy that I wouldn't say put the Mets on his back like Cespedes did in 2015, because the Mets have more star power than they did then. But Suarez could be that significant power in the middle of the order that just changes the outlook of the lineup, because we've talked about this before. It's all a trickle-down effect. Okay, so Suarez is batting fifth now, right? And all right, so that means McNeil's batting sixth, and then everything's a trickle-down and makes the lineup deeper. So third base on our radar. If it becomes a thing, you're going to hear a lot of "we want Eugenio Suarez" talk on this podcast.
Yeah, it's a big name to watch, and we'll be all over all the big names. This is the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Taking a Cadillac is more than just taking a drive. Discover which Cadillac is right for you and elevate every journey. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer. Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. Leave us a review with the question. Of course, we'll use those for a future mailbag. And of course, you can watch every episode on SMY's YouTube channel. Please become a subscriber over there as well. Don't forget about the sweepstakes for the hats. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You have multiple ways to win. Giving out 4 of them, 4 winners to get involved with that. Thanks so much, everybody. Better times ahead. We'll talk to you next week.